You ever open your mailbox, see an official-looking envelope, and immediately know it's not good news? Yeah, that's how my week started. A white envelope with the HOA logo on top. Bold letters like it's the FBI or something. I tore it open thinking maybe it's another notice about community BBQs or some boring update about recycling bins. Nope, it was a violation notice. Apparently, my grass was exceeding acceptable height. Like really? Who the hell measures grass? I actually laughed out loud because it sounded like a joke. But then I saw the warning line at the bottom. Failure to comply within 7 days will result in fines. I went outside, looked at my lawn, and honestly, it looked fine. Green, clean, maybe a little long, but definitely not jungle material. Still, I figured, fine, I'll mow it, no big deal. So I grabbed my mower, spent half an hour cutting it, cleaned the sidewalk edges, even trimmed the corners just to be safe. The place looked like a golf course when I was done. I felt weirdly proud, like, there you go, HOA, perfectly short grass. Now, leave me alone. A week later, I came home from work, checked my mail, and found another envelope from them. I thought maybe they're sending a thank you note or something. Nope, again, it was a fine $75, non-compliance. My brain froze for a second. I actually said out loud, "You've got to be kidding me." I called the HOA number listed at the bottom. A woman answered in the most robotic tone imaginable. I explained I mowed the same day I got the letter. She said, "Sir, once a violation is recorded, the fine cannot be reversed. You'll have to appeal in writing. Appeal in writing. Over grass." I hung up the phone, and my blood pressure was probably higher than the damn grass they were mad about. That night, I kept thinking about it. How ridiculous it was that a group of random people had this much control over my yard. I mean, I pay my mortgage, my taxes, my utilities, and somehow they think they can fine me for an inch of grass. It felt like living in a kindergarten ruled by power-hungry hall monitors. The next morning, I walked outside with my coffee, looked at my lawn again, and got this evil little idea. If they're gonna obsess over my grass, maybe I'll give them something much bigger to complain about. I didn't want to just get even. I wanted to make a point. So I started doing some research. I read the HOA rulebook, every single boring page. And guess what? There was not one line that said I had to keep grass at all. It only said yards must be maintained and visually presentable. That was my loophole. That same weekend, I drove to a local nursery. I loaded up my truck with all kinds of plants, palms, cactus, wildflowers, vines, shrubs, even a little lemon tree. The guy at the counter asked if I was opening a garden shop. I said, "Nope, just improving my lawn." He laughed and wished me luck. Over the next 2 days, I completely transformed my yard. I ripped out half the grass, planted tall bushes along the fence, put down stone paths, added hanging plants, and surrounded everything with bright desert flowers. When I finished, it looked like something out of a nature magazine or a small jungle, depending on who you asked. Neighbors started slowing their cars as they passed. Some smiled and gave me a thumbs up. Others just stared like I'd lost my mind. The lady across the street yelled from her driveway, "You know the HOA is going to flip out, right?" I grinned and said, "Oh, I'm counting on it." 3 days later, I got the next letter. It was longer this time. 2 full pages accusing me of landscape violations and disruption of community uniformity. Apparently, my front yard didn't fit the aesthetic standard of the neighborhood. I laughed so hard reading it, I nearly spilled my coffee. Then I checked the rule book again. Still nothing about specific plants or design limits. They were just mad because I broke their cookie cutter look, so I ignored it. Let them stew. A week later, I got hit with a $500 fine. 500. I swear these people were inventing numbers at this point. The letter said, "Failure to restore lawn to HOA approved condition may result in legal escalation." Legal escalation? Over plants. I decided to reply, not because I was scared, but because I was having too much fun. I wrote them a letter that said, "Please clarify which section of the HOA code specifies lawn type or plant limit." I attached pictures of my yard, neat, maintained, 0 weeds, and signed it, a proud member of the community ecosystem. 2 days later, I saw the HOA president herself parked across the street, clipboard in hand, taking pictures of my yard like it was a crime scene. She spent a good 20 minutes writing notes. My neighbor texted me, "Dude, the HOA lady's staking you out." I laughed and waved at her from my porch. She didn't wave back. That night, I decided to double down. I added solar lights along the path, a little fountain, and a few more hanging plants. If they were going to call it a jungle, I'd make it a 5-star jungle. I even named one of the palm trees Karen, just for the irony. Days passed. No word. Then one morning, another envelope arrived, thicker this time. I opened it and found a formal notice of hearing. They wanted me to attend an HOA meeting about my ongoing violations. Perfect. I printed every photo, every receipt, and a copy of their own rules. I was ready to fight them with their own words. When the day came, I walked into that meeting room like I was walking into court. There were 5 people at the table, all wearing serious faces, like this was national security. The president cleared her throat and said, "We're here to discuss your non-compliant yard." I just smiled and said, "Happy to." So there I was, sitting across from 5 HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be judging a courtroom than a neighborhood lawn. The president, this lady named Margaret, adjusted her glasses and started reading from a printed sheet. "It has been brought to our attention that your yard is in violation of Section 4.3, landscaping, consistency." She paused like she just read out a murder charge. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, waiting. She continued, "Your yard introduces excessive foliage, non-native species, and disrupts the uniform community appearance." When she said excessive foliage, I had to bite my tongue not to laugh. I asked politely, "Can you show me where Section 4.3 defines what's excessive?" She blinked, looked down, started flipping through her binder. Then, one of the board members, this older guy named Paul, leaned forward and said, "It's a matter of interpretation." That was it. The golden phrase. I smiled. "So, you're finding me based on interpretation." The room went silent. I pulled out my printed copy of their rules, highlighted and tabbed because I've read this entire document, and it doesn't mention plant types, yard layout, or a foliage limit. It only says yards must be maintained and not create a nuisance. Paul cleared his throat, clearly realizing they were on thin ice. "It's about maintaining harmony with the neighborhood aesthetic." I grinned. "You mean conformity?" That word made Margaret's lips tighten. "We're not asking for conformity," she said quickly. "We're asking for consistency." I leaned back in my chair and said, "Consistency and conformity are just cousins with different haircuts." A few people in the back, some residents who came to watch, chuckled quietly. You could tell they were tired of this nonsense too. I showed them photos of my yard. Neat, watered, weed-free, no trash, no overgrowth. "Tell me," I asked, "what exactly about this violates community standards?" They looked at the photos like they were seeing them for the first time. Margaret sighed. "It's not the condition. It's the presentation." I said, "So the presentation of being different is a finable offense." Paul rubbed his forehead. "We just want everyone's yards to match the community's character." I asked, "And who defines that character?" He said, "The board." That was all I needed. So basically, 5 people get to decide what beauty looks like for 300 homeowners. Margaret shot me a look like I'd just dropped a bomb. I could see the cracks forming. The audience in the back started whispering. I kept my calm. "You know," I said, "when I moved here, I thought the HOA was about maintaining standards, not micromanaging individuality." Margaret tried to regain control. "Sir, this meeting isn't about your philosophy. It's about compliance." I smiled again, opened my folder, and slid a small stack of papers toward them. "Then you'll be happy to see I filed a written appeal with photos, maintenance receipts, and legal references. You'll find no violation stands based on your own handbook." She skimmed through it, her eyes darting faster now. The silence was heavy. Finally, she said, "We'll review this and notify you within 10 business days." I nodded, stood up, and said, "Take your time. The garden's only getting greener." I walked out of that room like I'd just walked off a movie set. The people in the back gave me quiet smiles. One guy even whispered, "Nice job, man. That made it worth it." Over the next few days, things got weird. Neighbors started dropping by, curious. Some asked for plant tips. Others wanted to know if the HOA was really threatening me. I told them everything. And suddenly, word spread around the whole block. It turned out I wasn't the only one they'd been bullying. One guy got fined for having the wrong shade of beige on his door. Another lady was forced to remove her bird feeder because it attracted wildlife. I'm not kidding. Wildlife. In a suburb. So we started talking, sharing stories. And it became clear everyone was fed up. I didn't plan on starting a movement, but apparently that's what happened. Someone made a Facebook group called HOA Survivors of Maple Grove. Within a week, it had half the neighborhood in it. People posted their violation letters like badges of honor. Some even joked about printing them on t-shirts. Then, one night, I got a text from my neighbor Mark. "Check your yard. It's glowing." I looked outside and nearly burst out laughing. Someone had put little solar lights all along my plants, spelling out the words free lawn. It was hilarious. I left them up. A few days later, I got the official letter from the HOA after review. The board has decided not to pursue further action at this time. That was their way of admitting defeat without saying it. I framed that letter, hung it right by my front door. But I wasn't done. Oh no. This whole thing had opened my eyes. These HOAs thrive on silence. People just paying fines and moving on. But what if you fought back smartly? What if you used their own rules against them? So I started documenting everything. Photos, dates, letters, all of it. I even began recording short clips about my experience. Not for revenge, but to show others how to stand up to petty HOA nonsense. I uploaded the first video online. I called it the HOA Jungle. It was just me telling the story, with clips of my yard in the background. I didn't think anyone outside the neighborhood would care, but then it blew up. Thousands of views in a few days. Comments poured in. People from all over were sharing their HOA horror stories, from Texas to Florida to California. Some had been fined for having Christmas lights up too long. One guy got fined because his trash bin was visible for 3 minutes after pickup. The stories were insane, and the internet was loving it. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every homeowner who ever felt trapped by rules that make no sense. The HOA Jungle series became a thing. I kept uploading updates, and every time the HOA tried to push back, it just made the story juicier. But then came the final showdown, something I didn't see coming. One morning, I got a certified letter delivered to my door. Inside was a notice HOA intends to pursue legal action for community defamation. Apparently, my videos had damaged the association's reputation. I sat down, staring at that letter, and just started laughing. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. So there I was again, holding another letter from the HOA. But this one was different. It wasn't a fine. It wasn't a notice. It was a threat. Straight up legal action. They claimed my videos damaged the community's image and that I needed to take them down immediately or face court proceeding. I actually laughed out loud. Like, seriously, these people fined me for grass, stalked my yard, and now they're crying about reputation. You can't make this stuff up. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started reading the letter line by line. It was full of fancy legal words: defamation, non-compliance, reputational harm. But here's the thing. I hadn't said a single lie in those videos. Everything I posted was backed with proof, photos, letters, their own rulebook. And that meant they had nothing. Zero. Still, I wanted to be smart, so I called a lawyer. Just a short consultation to make sure I wasn't missing anything. The lawyer listened to the whole story, every ridiculous detail, and when I was done, he said, "They're bluffing. HOAs do this all the time, hoping to scare people into silence. You're well within your rights." That's all I needed to hear. That night, I made another video, maybe the most important one. I titled it, "The HOA is suing me, kinda." I told the whole truth, the letter, the threats, everything. But I wasn't angry or dramatic. I was calm, even funny about it. I said, if maintaining a beautiful yard and telling the truth damages the community, maybe the problem isn't the yard. That line hit hard. The video exploded overnight. Views in the hundreds of thousands, comments everywhere. People were tagging news outlets, lawyers, even local officials. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters were emailing me. A small local station wanted to interview me. I didn't even know what to say. It was surreal. From one silly grass fine to being on the news all in a few months. The HOA must have been fuming, because within a week, that legal threat magically disappeared. No follow-up, no lawsuit, just silence. But the silence didn't last long because something incredible happened. Homeowners from other states started reaching out. They'd seen my videos and wanted advice on standing up to their own HOAs. I became, somehow, the accidental HOA rebel. One guy from Arizona told me, "Dude, I turned my whole front yard into a cactus garden because of you." I couldn't stop laughing. Another woman from Florida wrote, "Your videos gave me courage to fight back. I was fined for hanging a flag." Not anymore. I realized then, this wasn't just my story. This was a movement. A quiet rebellion against all those tiny tyrants hiding behind clipboards and rulebooks. So I kept going. I made more videos, not just about my yard, but about others' stories too. I'd narrate their battles, their wins, their defeats. I called it HOA stories. Real people, real madness, and sometimes real justice. The channel blew up faster than I ever imagined. Within months, I hit 100,000 subscribers. Sponsors started emailing. People were sending clips of their HOAs doing ridiculous stuff, like banning wind chimes or measuring mailbox heights. It was comedy gold, but also sad, because it showed how common this power trip had become. Meanwhile, back in my neighborhood, something started shifting. The same HOA that once tried to fine me into silence began backing off. They weren't sending as many letters anymore. They stopped patrolling the streets like wannabe sheriffs. Some of the board members even resigned quietly. The pressure, the attention, it all became too much for them. And guess what? Replaced it. Peace. Actual peace. People started relaxing, planting flowers, painting doors, adding little touches that made their homes unique again. One evening, I was sitting on my porch, sipping lemonade, watching the sunset through my palm trees, my beautiful non-compliant palm trees, when Margaret, the HOA president herself, walked up. I thought, here we go again. But she surprised me. She said, "You know, your yard actually looks pretty good." I smiled. "Took you long enough to admit it." She laughed, a real laugh this time, and said, "Maybe we needed a reminder that rules aren't everything." That line stuck with me. Maybe she was right. Maybe sometimes people just forget that communities are made of people, not regulations. She turned and left, and I just sat there thinking. All of this started because I refused to mow a little extra grass. A week later, something even crazier happened. My channel hit 500,000 subscribers. I couldn't believe it. I made a thank you video, standing right there in my front yard, the same one that started it all. I told everyone watching, don't let anyone fine you for being different. Whether it's grass, paint, or whatever, your home should reflect you, not a rule book. The comments section was wild. Thousands of people sharing their stories, some even sending pictures of their rebel lawns. It became this unspoken community, people reclaiming their space, one yard at a time. I read every comment that night and realized something powerful. When you push back against unfair systems, even small ones, you give everyone else permission to do the same. Months passed. My yard grew even more lush. Birds nested in the trees, butterflies hovered over flowers, and kids from the neighborhood started coming by just to look around. Parents called it the forest house. It made me smile every time. That once non-compliant yard had turned into the most loved spot in the whole community. Then one morning, I got another letter from the HOA. My heart skipped a beat. Old habits die hard. I opened it carefully, ready for another ridiculous warning. But it wasn't that. It was an invitation. They wanted me to join the HOA board. I stared at it for a long time, laughing softly to myself. The same people who fined me, threatened me, and tried to shut me down, now wanted me to help lead them. I didn't give them an answer right away. I just walked outside, looked around my little forest, and thought, maybe this is how change happens. Not through shouting, not through fighting, but through showing a better way. Maybe I'll join them. Maybe I won't. But one thing's as for sure. No one is ever going to measure my grass again.